it's clear to me you've had some really strong influence over the past 5 years, and I think it somehow came in the form of some really strong mentorship that's helped guide you. And I'm hoping you can speak a little to that, because I know how important it is to all the folks that are in this room that are passionate about sound, about audio. A lot of what the challenges we're faced with is how to make the transition into these new technologies, because it can be really daunting. So can you just talk a little bit about what helped propel you into the position that you're in today? Because I know there was really one person who was very instrumental in that process, and I'm hoping you can speak a little bit to that.
Sure. So as a brief lead up to, I think we're kind of talking about the same person. I'll get to that in just a second here. I have a music background. Mike and I have known each other through our music background. So you can come from anywhere and come into this business. You just kind of need big ears. You need to listen hard. And I think that if you do that, you'll be on a great course. So that's kind of like my forward on this. One of the things that I really appreciated coming from music when I got to San Francisco was, luckily for me, Pyramind is one of the first places I landed. And I found an ego-free mentality. I found people that were passionate. And very, very early on, I found mentors here. And again, this is not a shameless plug for Pyramind. This is actually my experience. And I think that my time here with Greg and with Paul Lipson at the time and Michael Roach at the time, and my experience with Camden Stoddard, who worked with Brian Min, and my experience working with Ash briefly, and my experience working with Mike, I see this very much where we help each other up constantly. And so it's so much about the network, whether it's a direct mentorship or not. It's about the network. It's about building relationships and trust with folks, and working hard for them and showing them that you want to do this thing. And then I think that if you do that, you'll be, first and foremost, you'll be okay. You'll find your way. If you're lucky enough to find somebody like I did, this gentleman named Franklin Clary. He was a veteran of Skywalker Sound of about 10 years. And when I was an engineer and production coordinator here at Pyramind, he was the newly fledged audio director for a business called Toy Talk, which is now PullString. And so, I don't want to get super deep in it, but basically, Frank used our booth here until the VC money was able to build him a booth at his shop.
He was actually a client here.
He was a client here at Pyramind, and I became the first assistant. I became sort of their man on the ground. I was the Ophelia to some extent. I was the Mike Force and the Ash. Over time, we've all played that role for many, many rad companies here at Pyramind. But I was really fortunate enough to build a bond with Frank over about 8 months. And Frank was like, hey, I'm about to make an audio hire, and I want you to consider that. And so I did, and it became, luckily enough, I applied for it, and I got that job over at Toy Talk. And later he revealed to me that, I said to him, I don't have nearly the experience you have, and I know that you have this giant pool to choose from, so I don't understand. I literally, Frank, I love you, man, for bringing me in and bringing me in the startup world, and you're a badass. You've worked, this guy worked on Avatar and Iron Man and all these amazing films, and, he worked on early Ubisoft stuff. The dude is just a badass. So I was like, why choose me? And he was like, well, it's kind of about giving a leg up, and it's about the legacy of the things that I've done. So in his time, about 10 years ago, when he was out here in the Bay and he was just starting up, he got a leg up from a Skywalker employee who was part of the old hat Skywalker. He was the Ben Burtt, Gary Rydstrom, Randy Tom generation. That guy met Frank and said, Frank, you seem like a hard worker. I like you. I want to give you a way into this. And so basically, Frank became his apprentice at the time. And Frank shared with me, I have been looking for an opportunity for my professional career to give that back. And so I spent the next 3 years with Frank learning a really, really regimented film audio discipline. This dude did not cut me slack. I worked long hours. I cut thousands of lines of dialogue. I wasn't allowed to look at sound effects. No joke. This guy was like, this is how it is done. This is how it was done when I worked for Tom Myers, for Randy Tom, when I worked for Rydstrom, when I worked for Rizzo. And if you look up all these guys, I'm name dropping left and right. These are the badasses. These are the godfathers of what we do. And he was fortunate enough to work with them. So I stumbled into this. I basically had a positive attitude, hardworking attitude, and I was able to not get fired. And that really was I thought I was going to get fucking fired. And I didn't. And Frank took me under his wing, and it took me a while. And eventually I got into the fold with him, and he taught me much more than dialogue editorial. He taught me effects editorial, and he taught me sound design, and he taught me mixing. And more than anything, he taught me about storytelling, which is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful gift to get that from a person with his reverence for the craft, which he had a deep reverence for the craft, and he wanted to share it. Unfortunately, I'll share with the crew right now, this is the first time I've talked publicly about this, and many people know in my circle, if you've known Frank, I'm happy for everybody who's known Frank. Frank passed away about a year ago. He was 36. And so I had a brief window to hang with this dude and get this really, really special experience with the guy. And he had become a close friend and virtually a part of my family. But the metaphor that I can carry forward now is that my ethic is completely different because I paid close attention to his reverence and his work ethic. And I cared deeply about the things he wanted to share with me, and he cared deeply about sharing those things. And I mean, they're everything from like the deepest technical white papers that we would go through my first weeks there. And he'd be like, dude, why should we be at 24 LUFS? Like, I can tell you we're going to be at, neg 24, but like, you tell me why we're going to be there. And I'd be like, fuck, I don't know. What do you mean? And he'd be like, go away, dude, figure this out. And he'd be like, I don't want you cutting dialogue until you know that, and it was like that. And for him and his experience at Skywalker, it was very much like that. And his metaphor was not so much that somebody would just be a dick to you. It was, you're not going to get work if you can't figure this out. Like, you need the initiative. You need to know this thing. So there were a lot of like hard lessons early on. And then there was a lot of amazing collaboration towards the later part of our relationship, where we shared a lot. So I hope that sort of honors the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, he was truly a mentor to
you.
Yeah,
he was a mentor to me. He was a close friend to me, and it was a gift to have a mentor. And there's a lot of value in understanding who knows the things you don't, who's great at a thing you want to be great at, and who's great to work with. It's a general rule, surround yourself with good people. But another good thing is, don't be the smartest person in the room. I mean, this is all common sense stuff, but like, in practice, the last 4 years of my life, my audio career was transformed. And I will say, before he passed away, he talked about our advancement. So me becoming audio director at PullString, unfortunately, was a circumstance of him passing away. However, our management had the confidence in me because of what I had learned from him. And he knew that I was sort of his successor, and as he was for other folks in the Skywalker lineage. So just a lot of cool stuff. And then I brought Mike into the fold under the same guise, like sharing that knowledge with him. And so Mike is now in the rigorous thousands of lines of dialogue, fucking notes. He edits 100 lines, and I'm like, I got a note for every line. I got 4 notes on this one fucking line of dialogue, dude. Do it again. But yeah, I hope that leaves you guys with something. He was a special guy, and the more that I can talk about him in public, the better. May you all find somebody like that to apprentice for. And I will say, like, Camden Stoddard is a close friend of mine over at Double Fine, and talks highly about his time with Brian Min and apprenticing with Brian Min, and about the lessons he learned about music and mix and the way that audio plays a role in games. And that's specifically something that he talks about on a regular basis with me to this day. And Brian's been, gone from Double Fine for a few years. And so he still talks about that.
If you're a music producer, subscribe to our channel and stay up to date on the latest Pyramind tutorial videos, track breakdowns, elite sessions, and more. Visit us at pyramind.com.